So just to give you a little bit more context of what actually is a pre-roll, there's a huge variety, like I mentioned, in size. So some of the most popular sizes are the 109 1 gram. When a state first legalizes, you'll see the 1 gram dominate, just a single joint in a dupe tube, very simple, easy to make. That's going to be the most popular. Then you'll see 84s, which are the half gram. A lot of people can't smoke 1 gram in a sitting, even with 2 or 3 friends. A half gram could be enough. So you'll see a lot of 2-packs with the 84 millimeter. And then the 98 millimeter, which is right in between, fits about a 0.7. That's becoming really popular again now in multi-packs. So you'll see about 5.7 pre-rolls, and that comes out to 3.5, a nice weight, for a retail store. And then there are some new sizes coming out, especially out of Illinois, the dog walker size, which is really popularized by the brand Dog Walkers, a GTI company. Those are getting really popular. And then there's larger size formats. So there's a 109 wide pre-roll cone that fits 1.5 grams, and then people are making 2 and 3 gram type of pre-rolls as well. And those are typically in tube form. So you have a cone on one hand, a tube in the other. A lot of people debate what's the difference, what's better or worse. Honestly, both offer different smoking experiences. The tubes are harder to fill, so you'll either have to pack them by hand or use specialized equipment that's designed for filling tubes. A lot of companies that are just entering the cannabis market think that they can get some retrofitted tobacco equipment, and it's a never-ending nightmare from people that we've heard that buy tobacco equipment. It just doesn't work with cannabis. There's a huge difference between cannabis and tobacco. Cannabis is very fresh, sticky, whereas tobacco is dried out, it's not sticky at all. So the way that tobacco equipment works, it crushes the tobacco, shoves it into the tube, and then as the tobacco releases, it has some air capacity, it fluffs back up and it fills the tube nicely. If you try to do the same thing with cannabis, when the cannabis is compacted and then put into the tube, it doesn't fluff back out, it remains really sticky, and then you have a really bad experience. Also, those machines tend to clog from the oils of the cannabis. So the main styles of tubes, you'll have the cigarette style, and I say style because people aren't just putting cannabis into actual cigarette tubes. The filter on a cigarette naturally filters out a lot, which you would hope for in a cigarette, but people who consume cannabis don't want it to filter out all the cannabinoids, so there's special cigarette style tubes that are designed with different types of filters, which I'll get into. There's natural palm blunt options, and it's not actually a palm leaf. There's 2 different types of leaves that are really popular in the market, a cordia and a tendu leaf, which we'll get into a little bit more detail. And then there's a big surge in hemp wrap. So you can't use tobacco in the cannabis industry. You're not allowed to mix nicotine and THC in a legalized, recreational or medical setting. So there's tobacco-free hemp wraps and other sort of natural botanical wraps that are getting very popular. So here's some of the different paper types. You've probably heard of rice paper and hemp paper. Rice is actually a marketing gimmick. Elements is known for its rice paper. It's really just wood pulp, but wood pulp isn't as sexy as saying rice paper. And then also unbleached and bleached is also a misnomer. No one's using bleach in the paper industry. Maybe that was used hundreds of years ago. But the way they actually change the paper, change the color, is just by mechanically cleaning and scrubbing the fibers and getting rid of everything except for the actual pure plant cellulose. And the difference between the brown or the hemp is the color is what's left over in the plant fiber. So there's actually just some more plant components in there. And what's in there is called lignans. It's just a plant structure. And lignans is actually what makes barbecues smoky. So when you're making barbecue food and you use wood chips and you get that nice smoky, woody flavor, that's the lignans in the wood chips that give it that flavor. You don't want that in a pre-roll. You want to taste your flower. So actually, me personally, I think that the refined white is the best, cleanest burning paper. Then below that, you have different GSMs of paper. So GSM is grams per square meter. That's how paper is measured, and is by how heavy it is per square meter of the paper. So those 3 below the white, brown, and the hemp are for cigarette tubes and cigarette style tubes. Since those are in tube shape and normally get packed by machines, it has to be a little bit thicker for the machine to be able to handle it. And then below, there's a lot of companies doing unique things out there with actual printing on the paper with edible soy-based inks. And so there's some examples down there at the bottom. On the other hand, you have blunts, which is a thicker, slower burning material. It really just caters to a different type of customer. Some people love blunts, some people hate blunts. It's better for a social setting. It's a slower burning and normally a larger format pre-roll. You'll see a lot of 1, 2, 3 gram blunts, whereas joints are actually getting smaller now. We've seen the trend towards those mini dog walkers, which are really popular, in Illinois. So the goji, sage, and cocoa are just different examples of botanical blunts. Similar to a hemp wrap, instead of hemp, it's made out of those natural materials. And then down toward the bottom are those palm blunts. And there's two types. So King Palm is the consumer brand. If you've ever heard of it, very popular. They sell like 1 to 5 packs to consumers to fill with their own material. That's a cordia leaf. It's a darker, shinier green. And then there's the tendu leaf, which is a lighter in color. And what makes the difference between the cordia and the tendu, besides its actual different leaf, is the way that the tendu leaf is cured. It's cured using heat, which helps get rid of all the chlorophyll and some of the plant components. So when you see a cigar or in the tobacco industry, you're not smoking a green tobacco leaf. You know, they cure it and they get rid of all the chlorophylls and nutrients and they flush it, and that turns it brown. So similarly, the tendu leaf is flushed of a lot of the plant components, leaving it, you know, a more muted green or a grayer color, but that's actually gonna let you taste your flower better. And then typically these natural leaf options are packaged with a corn husk filter tip, which creates a more premium smoking experience as well. And then more on filter tips. The standard in the pre-roll industry is just the W zigzag filter tip. That's what 95% or more of pre-rolls are gonna be made with. If you want to upgrade to a more luxurious option, there's the spiral tip. The main purpose of the filter tip in the pre-roll is not actually to filter anything except for maybe particles that would get sucked into your mouth. So when someone's smoking, you don't want, you know, material going into their mouth, especially since you're grinding it into a finer size. So the spiral tip does look a little bit nicer and will prevent more plant material from going into the consumer's mouth. The corn husk there down at the bottom is primarily used in blunts, especially the natural leaf blunts. And then more premium brands are opting for specialty type filters like the BioCool, which is similar to a cigarette filter, but not made out of plastic. So cigarette filters are actually made out of cellulose acetate, which is just extruded plastic. So the BioCool is similar in the sense that it's a filter, but it's all natural, made out of paper. And then people are getting fancy with glass and wood tips as well. So the filter tip, you know, could affect the airflow of the pre-roll. So if you want a filtered experience, it's going to be cooler on your throat, as well as impact, you know, potentially the flavor or the harshness of the flower. If you're putting CBD or more trim and shake into your pre-roll, it might be better to have a filter. That way the consumer, you know, doesn't have an off-putting taste or harshness to the material. If you have really high quality full flower and your product's going to be very fresh, you really don't need a filter. You know, you're going to opt more for the W, the spiral, or a glass tip if it's a really luxurious, nice product. And then other variables that you could change with the filter is the length. So some companies are packing the really small dog walkers, but they don't want the pre-roll to be tiny. So they'll have a huge filter tip, a little bit of paper at the top, creates a nice experience, has more time for the smoke to cool. And then you could, of course, add custom branding, either directly to the tip or around the paper in like the form of a cigar band.